Hi everybody, welcome to the Luke Gallant YT624EJ snowblower maintenance channel. This is episode 20. I never really thought this many episodes would accumulate, but here we are. The season is upon us, the 2023-2024 snow clearing season, where all of us get to struggle with the stuff that falls from the sky. This is going to be the snowblower's 8th year of operation, having picked it up in 2016. So I've been dreading a promise and a commitment that I made at the end of last season, which is to do a carburetor maintenance video. Now I question why I would maintain something that works properly with no issues. And the answer is to maybe just break the threshold and monetize my channel. That's a joke actually, because I think I'll get about $1 a year. So I think everybody probably knows the carburetor is in this corner of the machine, the left corner. I'm going to show some snippets of the manual, then we'll start disassembly. We'll have to use both the Yamaha, the snowblower manual itself, and there's the engine manual that describes the carburetor in more detail. One of the things about carburetors is they have a couple nemesis. Number one, dirt, and number two, bad fuel. So the way that dirt's obviously avoided is with filters and stuff in the fuel lines in the fuel tank and by putting in clean fuel. When you work on the carburetor, do not work in a dirty environment for your own sake. Only going to be pain that comes from this. So you'll notice my bench is clean. And the other thing is bad fuel. Bad fuel will create varnish, and varnish clogs carburetors. So I always drain this carburetor at the end of the season. And after every use, I shut the fuel off and typically let the snowblower burn the fuel out of the carburetor. Sometimes I don't do that, but if you're putting a snowblower away for an extended period of time, don't leave fuel in the carburetor. And you should always stabilize your fuel. So there's been a lot of drama in Canada about the fact that premium now has ethanol as well. And there's some government legislation that caused that. You should always stabilize your fuel unless you can use it all right away. So if you're putting a jerry can on the side of your house, you should stabilize that fuel with fuel stabilizer. Yamaha makes some. For example, here I've got a container of Yamalube fuel stabilizer and conditioner. So you don't need to put lots of this in a jerry can. You have to read the mixing ratio. And the other thing is, don't use old stabilizer. Like, there's no point to use stabilizer that's 10 years old. So you kind of have to keep this thing refreshed. I want to be careful not to create any issues, so I'll be going quite slow, looking at the manual, and then also keeping a very clean environment. Grains of sand and other similar particles destroy fuel passages because they get clogged in there. They don't destroy them, but they clog them. And then a clogged fuel passage means that your engine's not going to run very well. So I think this is kind of an obvious thing, but I see videos on YouTube of polluted work surfaces constantly. We're working on a carburetor. We're not working on something that can get dirty. All right, thanks for watching. Per usual here, I have the section on carburetor in the snowblower manual. And we've also got section 4-1 of the engine manual. All right, we're gonna take our trusty Phillips screwdriver and take off this cover. So we've got the carburetor here. It's quite obvious, I think. And the next step is to take off the air filter. Now, there is no air filter inside here because you're using this in winter. There's not supposed to be any dust, etc. So if you look inside, all it is kind of a passageway for the air, so no big objects will go in. There's the screen inside you want to take out. It goes in like this. So now we're going to use a 10mm socket to take off this plate that's in here. So there's 2 nuts and a plate that's in there. Oh, and there's 1 bolt down below. Then there's this plate here. It's called a flap, apparently. So we're gonna keep going. The instructions say to remove this fuel cock, but I don't really think that's necessary. I don't want to remove more than I have to. So we'll then get this plate off, and there's a gasket there behind it. So this gasket kind of says to use a new one, but if you take it off carefully, we should be able to avoid tearing it. And I wouldn't use a new one unless it tears. Here, we're gonna take it off in the same way, or we'll put it back on in the same way rather. The carburetor has the 2 hoses. We've got the drain line and the fuel supply line. Now, important point, this fuel cock is in the downward position and the carburetor drain position. So that means that the bowl has been drained through the small line, and the supply this might have fuel in it because it's been turned off, but the carburetor bowl is empty. So I'm gonna unhook the hoses at the top here and let them hang up. So I'm going to use a pair of curved needle nose and get in to remove that clip. So kind of remove that clip there. And then my arm's kind of in the way here, but I'm gonna grab this clip and remove it as well. Slide it back. Now you wanna be gentle with these hoses. Take a flat blade screwdriver, pry off the hose. So gonna put the hose up in here temporarily. Then the bottom drain hose, pull off the drain hose. So now I'm gonna put both hoses up in here. Here's the choke cable. And you can see that when you push the throttle lever, then finally the choke will engage and close off the air. So we've got 2 steps left to taking the carburetor off. We have to take the choke cable off, and then this will come apart by just turning it. So to take this off, what I'm going to do is mark in blue with a marker where exactly it's set, so that after I take it off with a small Phillips screwdriver, I want to know where to put it back. So I'll then slide that off the end of the cable if I can. There we go, and I've got a blue mark on there as to where to put it back. So I'll keep this handy. And then we got the carburetor, kind of take it off, and then we're gonna, so here, there's the cable, which we can now get off. And then we've got 2 things in here. We've got a spring, which we can carefully remove. What we'll do here is we'll just pull that off this way, and then the spring, kind of just bring it in and be careful not to bend it. Just pull it off like that. There you go. And we'll let that hang there. Now we've got the carburetor off. So keep in mind here, there's another gasket located here. I wouldn't bother taking that off. If it's not torn, I would reuse it. And then in here, we can actually see the valves on the intake. So we'll let all this stuff dangle here while we go to the workbench. All right, here we go. So we have the carburetor out. We've got the choke on the intake here. On the outlet side of the car, we've got the air flapper, the slide or whatever it is. So what I'm gonna do here, because Yamaha was so generous with their grease, I'm gonna remove this grease so that I can avoid getting it everywhere and I can actually see what's going on in there. All right, so the grease is cleaned off from that area. Now what we wanna do is make sure, while doing a carburetor, that we don't get anything in this port, We don't get grease or dirt creamed inside here. Because anything that blocks these ports is going to give us some problems. And then Luke's going to be pretty angry for taking something apart that really didn't need to be taken apart. So we can see this moves nice and free, no resistance, nothing's hung up. When I look inside, it looks very clean, really. It looks pristine. So what I'll do now is I'm going to start by getting the bowl apart. And reminder, you see the clean workbench? Please, please try to follow this. So we're going to use our trusty Phillips screwdriver, and that is quite tight. And we got it. So here we've got probably a copper or fiber washer. It says to use a new one of these, but I'll probably avoid doing that. So then pull the bowl chamber, or the chamber, sorry, off. We can see there's a gasket on the inside. So here we see we've got the float. Here we see the inside. It's pretty clean, to be honest. It's quite clean, I think. A little bit of maybe deposits in the bottom. We see the drain is nice and clear. We see how the drain's set up in the bottom there. So what I'm gonna do actually is use my pick, and I'm gonna first of all, I'm gonna make sure the pick is clean, because that's a terrible thing to do, is stick a dirty pick in a carburetor. So I'm gonna take this clean pick and get that gasket out, is what I'm going to do. Now you wanna not tear it, so I'll kind of run the pick along the groove there, gently, both sides. This is a Mikuni carburetor. There you go, pop that out, throw that there. Sorry, now we take the float out by pushing this pin out. Pin should come out, let's see. The pin should push out from one way or the other. Let's try it here. Oh, it's pretty tight. Yeah, that doesn't want to get out of there right now. I don't really feel like breaking it, obviously. All right, so we could push this pin out by tapping it gently. Something like a flashlight, nothing too heavy. I've seen people break these cast carburetor parts before, and if you break that, you're not gonna be able to fix it. So you wanna just tap that pin gently so it comes out. Then once the pin's loose, now you'll see the orientation, I took mine out. Now this pin's actually flattened on the one end, so it's not gonna push out that way. You're gonna have to push it out the other way, otherwise the flat's gonna get caught. I'm gonna put this pin over there. I'm gonna now take the float out. Now you see here, it's a plastic float with a non-adjustable float height. It's a plastic tab. We've got the needle assembly, which has the small carrier there, or I call it a carrier, I'm making names up now. So it's really hard for me to show on this camera, but this needle assembly that's attached to the float, you want to look at the end of it, make sure it's not worn. And you would see if it's worn because you'd see indents or grooves in it. But here it looks really, really nice in my opinion. I wish I can get a close-up, but it doesn't really work well on the camera. So I'll put that down. Now we've got that apart. We can look in the orifice where that component goes. So here we got the inlet, and the inlet comes in and fills the bowl. And once the float rises, it blocks off the fuel that comes in. So we can just kind of blow on this. The air is coming out of there, no problem. Plus you get a little bit of gas in your mouth, which is great. So that goes to here, so it looks clear. Now, there's a jet inside there and there's a jet on the side. All right, so next what we're gonna do, we've got the main jet on the side here, and we've got what I think must be a second main jet that's inside here. So what I do is I take a flashlight and you can shine light inside the carburetor and you can see right in that hole, okay? So it's like you're shining light through the back of this and seeing if you can see it. Now it's hard on the camera, but I can see here that this main jet is completely clear and there's absolutely nothing stuck in there. Then on the side, I can look at that one with the same technique and I see that it's really, really clear. There's absolutely nothing built in there. So I'm not going to remove these, but let's remove the center one actually. So we're gonna use this clean screwdriver and get in there. This is not actually the ideal screwdriver. You want a screwdriver ideally that's the entire width of the jet so that you don't strip it. So here we're gonna get a proper screwdriver in that main jet. We're gonna remove it. And we're gonna look through there. You're gonna look through and it is perfectly clean. We're then going to stick a proper screwdriver down in the hole here and remove that one. There we go. And there we have it. So in here now, we wanna look down the center of this, but we also wanna look at the side ports. The side ports are perfectly clear, really perfectly clear. And I can look down the center and it's perfectly clear. So this is really, really good. So put that there. Now we also want to look where the needle sits to see if anything looks bad in there. And to me, there's nothing wrong inside there at all. There's no dirt, debris, varnish of any kind. All right guys, so there's some things I'm not going to bother taking apart. So if I took these two screws out, I could end up putting the pulling the throttle assembly out, but I really don't see a need for that. I'm also not going to take apart the pilot jet, which is here. The pilot jet has a no-ring under here, which apparently needs to be replaced if you take it apart. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but I don't really want to find out. We've got the throttle stop here, the throttle stop screw. I don't really feel like removing it just to have to reset it. It was set from factory and I don't really have a problem with that. And then the choke assembly. I don't see a need to take the choke assembly apart. So the choke assembly is pretty simple. It just turns 90 degrees to block the air and some passages. We would take these two screws out and then pull everything out, but there's a spring and all kinds of stuff. So it's not a huge job, but I really don't think we need to do this for this video. Principally, you want to make sure the jets are clear. The ones I've taken out, the needle's in good condition, and that inside there's no dirt and there's no varnish and there's nothing. This is like a brand new carburetor is what it appears like. There's nothing at all that I can observe that's wrong with this thing. And I don't really want to start blowing air through there right now either because I don't want to get anything caught in there. So to me, really, really good, really pleased with it. It's a good thing to do, but if you keep your fuel clean, you shouldn't have any issues. So what we're gonna do now is we'll put this back in there, stick that in the hole, and you don't want to over tighten these things. So you're gonna screw it in until it hits the bottom and then give it a little tighten, nothing crazy. We're gonna put the so-called main jet into the side. So once that's in there, I think these are aluminum too, so be careful. So you're gonna put that in, tighten it, don't over tighten that. And you have to take this side one out in order to get the inside one out. Now with that done, we can put the carburetor upside down. Now what we're gonna do is hang the needle on the float and we'll drop that in there. So we'll drop that in there so the needle goes into the hole. Then we're gonna wanna put our pin back. So remember, the pin is flattened on the one side. So we're gonna put it in the side. It should go in very easily. You don't have to force that in there. And once it goes through, we might have to tap it just the same. So what I'll do here, I'm just gonna tap it. That's it. Actually, I might like to get that in more than that. Let's see here. I'm gonna put the gasket back on. So this gasket's a bit hard to get in there. We're gonna have to coax it in. All right, I got the gasket back in there. You want to make sure to push it into that crack all the way around and don't get it twisted. So now we're gonna put the bowl back on. So we just kind of put the bowl on. The hose will come out approximately where the other one did. I should have match marked these actually before I got going. And then we have what I believe is that copper washer. We'll put it on the bolt. So here we've got 9 Newton meters or 80 inch-pounds. I think that's tight enough. I'm not going to get this one torqued. Let's see where we're actually at. Let's try 60. Yeah, I'm not tightening that up that much. That's good enough for me. So there we go. That's the general disassembly of the carburetor. Now we're gonna get the carburetor mounted back on the snowblower. All right, so it's not a bad idea to have a look inside there with a flashlight. I had a look and it looks fine. So we're gonna take the carburetor, make sure your gasket is here. If it tore, get a new one. What we're going to do is gonna take the spring, we're gonna put it in that spot. Then we're going to tilt the carburetor so that we can get it like that. Then we're gonna raise the whole thing and insert it on. So I think I've gotten those actually twisted, which I don't want. So I'm gonna take that apart and go around. Now I'm gonna redo it, there we go. All right, perfect. So I've got the spring and the rod are not twisted. I'm gonna put this back. It's gonna bottom out down there. And then I'm gonna take this gasket with the same way I took it off. I'm gonna make sure it's clean. I'm gonna put it on. Then we've got this plate. I'm gonna put the plate on. We're gonna put the cable back through the choke assembly. I'm gonna take the little collar with the spring and the screw. I'm going to slip it on, spring first. Then I'm going to find my mark, my Sharpie mark. Just pull a little bit out. There we go. We've got the identical position. Then I'm gonna take the Phillips and tighten that. So then we can test the choke. So the choke works. So we're gonna put some Yamalube suspension grease just to replicate the factory install. We're now going to reconnect the fuel hose. So we're gonna stick that main hose on there. I'm gonna stick the drain hose on, the clamps rather. I'm gonna take the clamps, secure it on. I'm gonna take the other clamp and move it up and get it in there. There we go. So the 2 hoses are secured. We're gonna take the plate, put it on. Then we're gonna put this flap. Got the flap on there. So I'm actually going to loosen the other bolt because this fuel petcock has moved down a little bit. So you want to adjust the petcock so this hole's lined up perfectly. So now I can get the bolt in there. Then we're going to put the airbox back. So we're going to use our Loctite for these 2 nuts in that bolt. Going to then put the plate in, apply some Loctite to the 2 bolts, and some Loctite to that bolt. I'm going to put the 2 nuts on. I'm going to snug all this up. And then we've got 7 Newton meters, which is 62 inch-pounds. 62. Now we put the plate back in. Put the airbox cover back. So one of the final things you want to do is make sure that when you've reconfigured this that it still works and it holds. So for that I would say to put the choke on and see when its engagement point is and confirm that it works. You can see here as you get to the end of it, the spring kind of pulls in, but you can feel that choke come on the lever. So I'd say we're good to go on that. I applied a little bit of grease there, and then the throttle we're gonna make sure that it just moves. And finally now we're going to proceed with reinstalling the panel. Here we are, outside, first start of the year. I did the carburetor maintenance before I ever started the machine up this year. So myself and Yannick are going to go for the first start of the season. We're going to turn the gas on. Hope we got no leaks. So the gas is on, carburetor is going to be filling up. We want to give it about 15-20 seconds to fill. And then we're going to turn the key on. Should have the light. Then we're going to apply the choke. Here we go. We'll go for one more start. Alright, so like I mentioned, I turned the carburetor off and let the bowl drain itself as the machine shuts down. And now we know the bowl is empty and we won't have fuel sitting in there making sludge in those ports.
My dad should never have done that.
Why?
They'll have no more gas.
Only in the carburetor.
And it's a waste.
It is a bit of a waste, eh? Thanks for watching.
Bye.